Welcome to another episode of Against the Odds. My name is Njiben Sama, and today we're going to be talking about depression. Jim Rohn, the American author and motivational speaker, defined fear as false evidence appearing real. False evidence appearing real. Fear is a natural emotion that everyone experiences at some point. Now, regardless of what causes you to feel fear, the underlying emotion often causes us to avoid things that frighten us. We tend to avoid things we are afraid of in order to protect ourselves from perceived harm. For example, a fear of heights often translates to a fear of falling, which is a way to protect yourself from injury. Last week, the Cameroonian community woke up to news that a young Cameroonian engineer, 34-year-old Martin Kempak, had died by suicide in Australia. The Post claimed that Mr. Kempak committed suicide by jumping off a story building after discovering that his newly wedded wife, or pregnant wife, wedded and pregnant, was pregnant with somebody else's set of twins. I did a little digging and found out, thankfully, that the story was false. But before that discovery, the story had generated quite a number of varied comments from the Cameroonian community, ranging from possible diagnosis to outright condemnation. Most of the comments centered around depression, and I could deduce that these comments could be divided into two camps. One camp was for the depression deniers on the one hand, and those who advocated for sensitizing and treatments. So to illustrate what I'm talking about, here are samples of the comments from each side. One comment was, Africans should just remove the word depression from their mental sky immediately. And from the other side, the fact that we Africans may be ignorant about depression does not absolve us of its effects. That mental health, anxiety, depression, and other mental disorders affects Africans too. We just need to be sensitized about it. I happen to understand both sentiments because I have straddled both sides, both the denying of it and then finally accepting and seeking treatment. About 10 years ago, I lost my kids to divorce. I went from, being a middle-class income earner to being jobless and almost homeless, all within 2 years. That precipitated a downward spiral, a serious spiral down into depression, a depression that I was unwilling to accept. Even though my doctor diagnosed it and tried to help, I pushed back. I pushed back because I couldn't imagine myself accepting the fact that I was depressed. And to actually go sit down with a total stranger and talk about my problems. I mean, that was not the way we are brought up. I couldn't accept the fact that I was depressed and needed to talk about it. I couldn't see myself accepting that I needed help. Because doing so would be an acknowledgement that I was mentally ill, that I was crazy. And in fact, with that line of thinking, I did not take the medications that were prescribed. My doctor diagnosed the problem, gave me treatment for it, and I did not take the medication. And I really think maybe at this point, maybe I should really apologize to my doctor, because I know how hard she worked so I could get back on my feet. So Dr. Mikai, if you happen to be watching, please forgive me. I know you worked hard trying to educate me about this disease. You're all about helping me to get back on my feet. But I wasn't compliant. And because I wasn't compliant, the suffering was prolonged with devastating effects. Remember the definition of fear from the beginning? I was scared of being stigmatized. The fear of what people would say if they found out I was suffering from depression paralyzed me. And I sunk deeper and deeper into an abyss. So deep that I got to a point where I contemplated jumping off a bridge in Dallas. That's how bad it was. I want to believe that my ancestors were looking down on me, watching over me, because on that fateful morning that I was contemplating, that dastardly act. That very morning, 2 of my children called. The first call was from my youngest daughter, who just wanted to see how I was doing. And shortly afterward, the second call came from my fiancée, wife. And she, because my son wanted to talk to me. He was 3 at the time. And just hearing him say, "Aye, Daddy," was all it took to snatch me back from the brink. That's when I fully realized, that's when I fully acknowledged that something was terribly wrong. When I acknowledged that perhaps I was crazy. It took me 5 long years to fully come to grips with my condition. And so I sought help. I went to counseling. And this time around, I took my medication. To tell you how insidious the fear of being labeled cuckoo, to tell you how that fear is. My wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, never knew about this. She suffered all along, because depression doesn't just affect you. It affects everyone around you. And so I just imagine, and I just shudder to think about the thousands of family members who needlessly suffer because their loved ones fail to acknowledge their status, or about those who are ignorant of that fact. It's real. Depression is real. We as a community are not immune to it. And we are not immune to the vices that precipitate, we're not immune to this stuff, things that precipitate it. Issues like, marital issues, divorce, physical abuse, sexual abuse, alcoholism, all of these things exist in our community, and we're dealing with it. We're not talking about it. We're just better at hiding it. And that's true, better hiding, starting with me. I hid mine for years until now, until today. But what I can say is that it's not too late. We need to start opening up about our experiences. We need to help, ourselves, our community, by bringing these up, bringing our struggles up, telling our struggles. And to help turn the tide, we as a community need to realize that mental illness is real, and that seeking help is actually a sign of strength and not weakness. Depression abounds in every community. The difference is how it's handled. We need to create an awareness and encourage people to ask for help when they can't do it by themselves. In this country, depression and suicide prevention help is widely available. And they do list the kinds of symptoms to look out for. But, let me tell you how mine manifested. I lost appetite. I lost the zeal to do the things I love doing. In my case, I played the guitar and made music. So at that time, I had no interest whatsoever in touching the guitar. I slept a lot. I did not want to get out of the bed. I didn't want to be around people. I did not want to talk to anyone. I saw and told myself repeatedly that I was a failure and that life wasn't worth living. So those are the kinds of things that, that I struggled with at that time. So please watch out for these kinds of symptoms. Seek help if any of these are persistent and occurring more frequently. So, those were my symptoms, and that was my struggle. So, let me tell you how I got out of it. First, I accepted that I needed help. That was the first thing I had to acknowledge. I had to accept, bring myself to come to terms with the fact that I needed help. So I sought help. I talked to a psychiatrist. I took my medications. I listened to a lot of motivational speeches. I exercised regularly. And having a supportive environment, definitely helps. And I want to credit my lovely wife for her support and for putting up, with a lot of my ups and downs. Once more, depression is real. Seek help. Don't worry about, what other people are going to say. You need to seek help. You need to help yourself. Because, if you do help yourself, you're helping everyone else, especially your family, those loved ones around you, because they are the ones who are going to suffer the most when you deny, your status. So I want to thank you for taking the time to listen to me. Next week, or next time around, I'll be talking to 3 health practitioners, who will be shedding more light on this topic. And until then, please subscribe and share. Thank you.